Hello and Happy New Year. Welcome to another video about everything that's wrong with my 1995 Lotus Elan M100 S2. The car's off the road at the moment, but not because it's having problems. It's January, so I normally only have the car taxed for 6 months of the year. The reason for this is I like to avoid the worst of the weather in the winter and the salt on the roads that we get here in the UK. So I normally put it on what's called SORN for 6 months and then have 6 months tax over the summer. That normally works quite well, but it always gives me the problem that maybe other classic car owners have experienced, that sometimes March can be quite a nice month, but if you tax it in March, you miss September, and sometimes September can be quite a nice month here in the UK too. So there's always a bit of a sort of a juggle over which one of the end or the start of the summer months or spring months I want to actually have the car taxed and insured and on the road for. I might kind of do away with that this year because I'm getting a bit fed up with it, so I might just tax it for the full 12 months. So this video is about everything that's wrong with the Lotus. You probably, if you're a regular viewer to the channel, way back when I bought it, 2 or 3 years ago now, there were some issues and some problems, some of which I've tackled, and then others are still kind of ongoing. So really, with this video, they're things that I would like to tackle this year and try to, begin to put right, just to make the car that little bit nicer. Now, I'll probably get some flack in the feedback and in the comments about, I'm looking at superficial things. I know initially somebody said, if you're only worried about the calipers all being the same colour, then you're obviously having a good time of it. But, so some of them are cosmetic issues, and then other things that are sort of, mechanical and problems that I'll need to tackle as I go along. Now, before putting it back on the road this year, I probably want to do an oil change, even though the oil is still really clear, but it kind of says every 3,000 miles or so you should change the oil on the Isuzu engine. So I'll probably do that, and it's a good idea to give it a kind of a sort of a regular service of filters and plugs, as I'm sure you all know. So I'll be doing those kind of things sort of straight off the bat before I get it out of the garage. Now, the first job that I'm definitely going to have to do, which is a new problem, is a crack that's developed in the windscreen. I got a stone chip while I was driving the car, and then it's got progressively worse and turned into a long crack that's gradually working its way all the way up the windscreen. So unfortunately as well, it's right in the driver's eye line, or the sweep of the driver's windscreen wiper, which is going to be an MOT failure. So I've got to replace the windscreen. So as you can see, it's quite a long crack, but as you probably remember if you've seen this series before, the windscreen was delaminated anyway at the top, so I'm kind of not that worried about it. Now there's a better reason to replace the windscreen rather than it just being delamination and something that is purely cosmetic. One of the things I am slightly worried about, and other M100 owners will probably understand this or associate with this, is at the top corner these little plastic moulded corner pieces, which you can get 3D printed, and I could 3D print them as well, but it's quite a soft material, and these ones look like they're the originals as well. So I might have a go at sort of prizing those off myself before the person comes to fit the windscreen, because you never know, they might destroy them, they might not be aware that they're going to be an issue to get hold of. So I might pop those off beforehand before the windscreen gets replaced. Something else I might do this year as well is kind of do some work on the front brakes. The pads aren't particularly low, but it probably is time to replace them. I noticed on Facebook and on some of the other websites as well, a lot of people like to upgrade the brakes to AP racing and that kind of stuff, so that they don't have that kind of 1990s near-death experience. But I'm kind of okay with it. I sort of want to stick with the existing brakes because I think that's part of the driving experience. I might sound a little bit mad, but I think just having to work a little bit harder with the car, that's what it was like in the day. It was obviously safe enough in the day, so I'm going to kind of stick with that. I did buy some pads, as you can see here. These are Kotec ones, and I'm kind of reliably informed that they're Vauxhall Astra or Vauxhall Astra GTE from back in the day. So they'll go on at some point. I'll do a video on that. Also, one thing that has happened while the car's been laid up in the garage, I do disconnect the battery while the time it's here, and it's only been here for maybe, I don't know, 4 to 6 weeks or something like that. But you remember, if you've seen the previous videos, I had a new battery with a lifetime guarantee. But when I came back to the car after about 4 to 6 weeks, tried tried to connect the battery and start it, wouldn't start at all. Tried to charge it with a couple of different types of charger, wouldn't take a charge. So even though the battery had a lifetime guarantee, it was kaput. So I took that back to Quick Fit, and they've changed the battery to, doesn't look the same. It's a slightly different model. It looks like it's a French brand, but they didn't give me any paperwork, so I'm slightly worried that if this one goes wrong and I'll go back, they'll say they don't recognise the battery at all and it's not the one that's on the paperwork. So I'll keep you posted on what happens with that. But it seems a fairly strong battery and it seems to be starting okay and everything else, so no problems so far. But linked to the battery, another thing I'd like to change, as you can see, is this Tupperware kind of kill switch that somebody's put on there. It looks a little bit naff. It's not particularly, you know, a high quality thing. You can't imagine that at Pebble Beach. But what I would like to do is relocate it as well, because sometimes getting in there to do that is a little bit of a faff, because you've got to kind of open the hood up, put the hood partly back, open the back part, and really get in there to switch the kill switch on. It would be so much easier, particularly in the garage here, if I could just open the boot, flick the kill switch, close the boot, and away I go. So I think I'll be doing a little bit of a relocation video on that very much in the near future. Something else that is very much starting to bother me is that the exhaust is really, really rattly, particularly when you just sort of start it up. There's lots of rattles and reverberation from the exhaust. It settles down as everything gets warmer, and I did think it was kind of where the main sort of piece of the exhaust joined, where it went to the kind of short, more convoluted pipe sort of underneath the engine. But the fit there isn't too bad. I think probably what is happening is maybe that the baffles inside the exhaust have started to get damaged or are moving around a little, so it's probably had its day. I don't necessarily mind changing it too much as well, because it is an aftermarket exhaust, which is maybe a little bit noisy. Obviously it was quite expensive because it's fully stainless steel, but I think it would be nice to go back to stock. So somebody on my Instagram account said it looked a bit max power, so obviously somebody from the 90s like myself. But I think changing it back to stock, maybe if I can get one that looks more stock but is stainless steel, that might be the winning sort of combination. So I'll probably go for that, and then make the car look a little bit more original as well, which is my kind of thing. Something else that has started to happen as well, that happened last winter, is that the driver's side window, it seems to kind of be a bit jerky and sort of stopping in places. I did have that problem, as I say, last winter, but it turned out to kind of be the weakness of the battery, and as soon as I put a new battery on, the window started to be fine again. Now that might be a little bit of my naivety, so anybody who's a real kind of M100 nutcase will probably know that there's something specifically wrong with this. It's probably, the mechanism is probably gummed up, or there's rust that's making, you know, causing a little bit more resistance than it needs to. So the stronger battery is overcoming that, but obviously that's something that's going to need to be tackled at some point. Now, I did go through the old paperwork. I think I might have mentioned this in a previous video, and you know, there have been some issues in the driver's door. Really early on in its life, it went back to the dealership. They had the door apart. There were some problems with the driver's door key mechanism as well, which I think there still is, to be fair, so they obviously didn't fix that. So I'm probably going to hope for the best when it gets a bit warmer. Make sure the battery's at full strength, see if the problem, you know, see if I can muddle through with that for another year, or it might be a case of having to have the whole door panel off and seeing what's going on in there. It's probably going to need to happen at some point. So I'll move on to a few cosmetic things. I know some people don't like talking about that. It's just about the mechanics, but some of the things that have bothered me about it, that maybe I should have been a little bit more cautious of when I bought it, is there's a lot of stone chips on the front of the car. I've mentioned before, I don't mind it so much because I don't have to kind of be so scared when I'm out driving it, but in some lights it's really, really noticeable. Obviously the kind of undercoat is white or a very light grey, so in some lights, in sunlight, it really, really shows up and makes the car look quite bad. So I'm probably going to have a look around Leicestershire area and see who's good at kind of doing that kind of repair work. Unfortunately, as you can see, it's kind of not just on the bumper panel that that could be easily removed and easily painted separately. It's moved forward into this kind of clam area which runs, you know, all the way around the car. So the wings are kind of integral to the front clam. It's a whole single piece. So obviously that can be done. It could be feathered in. It would have been easier to take the bumper off and maybe take that somewhere to a painter's and get that done, but it's probably a little bit more extensive than that. There's some work on the bonnet that needs doing as well. So mainly front end, but it'll be nice to have that sort of smartened up a little bit. A couple more things that I probably need to do that have been around on the car since I bought it. The boost gauge, it's not essential, but it would be nice to have that working. One thing I definitely really want to get working is the fuel gauge, because the fuel gauge worked fine when I bought it, when I drove it back, when I had it for the first few weeks, and then immediately kind of gave up. There's been some helpful comments on that as well, that it could be the earthing points on the car, which is probably you know, likely, and it's an easy thing to check before I move on to actually having to take the sender unit off the top of the tank and that kind of thing, which is a little bit more involved. But it's kind of something I definitely want to get done this year, because it is a bit annoying having to make note of the mileage and then kind of refer to the owner's manual that sort of says it will do about 250 or so miles before you're out of fuel, you know, resetting the mileometer, and then, you know, kind of always kind of looking at that to see whether you've got any fuel. Would be really nice to get the fuel gauge working again. Something else that bugs me a little bit is, because the car looks quite sharp, the interior is, you know, really nice condition considering its age, is that the window rubbers, or the rubbers around the sort of header rail and down the side, are really perished and quite nasty, and it does let down the look of the car. It's quite noticeable. There's still some gaffer tape on there that the old guy who owned it before me obviously put on there. So, you know, it's something that you notice when you get in and out the car. It's not too bad water-wise. You know, it manages to keep the water out, but it's something I'd really like to fix just to make the car look a little bit more presentable. So possibly the final thing would be the wheels. The wheels are in quite poor shape. There's some curbing and things like that, lots of chips. They've obviously been repainted before, or a couple of times, but it would really be nice to get those sort of super sharp. So I'll be looking for a company, you know, around the Leicestershire area that could do a good job on those. I'm probably expecting maybe £100 a wheel or something like that, which is you know, not too bad at all. But I think that would really improve the look of the car. And it's really nice that it's got these BBS wheels on for the S2. You know, they can be really expensive. I've seen some people advertising them for £2,000 for the set or more. And, you know, because they're quite rare, they're difficult to find. So it's something that I think it will really set off the car if they're sharpened up a little bit. And I've always hated curbing. I had curbing on the wheels of my MX-5 years ago that was always put there by somebody else, because I'm really careful about not curbing my wheels. So to drive around with a car that's got lots of curbing on it, particularly as it's a hobby car and it's something that's supposed to be a bit of fun, it'll be really nice to get that sorted out as well. Another thing I'd like to sort out is the condition of the rear dampers. Anybody who's watched the series before, you probably saw when we worked on the rear calipers that we noticed that the condition of the rear dampers was quite poor. They're quite corroded. It also came up as an advisory in the MOT as well. So I think getting those off, maybe at some point in the next year, cleaning them up, seeing what they're like, possibly replacing them, because sometimes when you go over some quite sharp bumps, it seems as though they're kind of not quite up to probably what they should be. It's quite a harsh bang, so they could probably be a little bit better. So maybe it might be a bit of reconditioning, or it might be completely replacing them for new units. Another cosmetic thing that might be quite nice to do is, you've probably noticed when we're working in the engine bay, there's some corrosions on some of the bracketry around the turbo casing, or the turbo covering I should say, is a little bit corroded as well. Probably could do with it, you know, a good clean, and it would just be nice to make it look a little bit more like it came when it came from the factory. So a little bit of cleaning, a little bit of kind of tidying up, getting rid of some corrosion, just to make the engine bay look a little bit prettier and a little bit more cared for, might be a nice thing to do as well. When I was putting the roof up in the summer as well, I managed to put my fingers through the moulding in the top here, where you can see where it's a sort of a hand grab type moulding. Looks like just a sort of a vac forming, and I could already see that somebody glued some pieces back in there as well. So it's obviously just got really brittle over the time, over the last, what, 20 what is it, 25, 26 years since the car was built. So I think that panel, you can buy the whole thing from SJ Sports Cars. I think it's quite expensive though, and it probably only comes in black, and then you've got to paint it yourself. So I might have a go at making myself a little mould, and maybe then just sort of vacuum forming that that particular piece, and seeing if I can sort of make that and put that back myself, which might make an interesting video for you guys to see if you have the same problem. I would imagine most M100 owners have probably had that problem, because they'll all be getting brittle by now. Okay, that's kind of the end of the show. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks very much for watching. There'll be more Lotus stuff obviously coming up, because we've got all those jobs to do, so I'll be doing more videos on that, and I hope you'll like those and enjoy those. I'm going to be doing some other car stuff as well. You've seen the car reviews maybe if you watch the channel. I really enjoyed doing the car review stuff, because I like finding out a little bit about the history of the cars. Obviously driving the cars really interesting as well, but I like doing the photography and setting up the different shots and stuff. So I'll be doing more car review videos. I'm also probably going to do some kind of car stories as well, so the sort of car histories or the history of particular cars, and any stories that I find interesting and unusual about maybe the development of cars, or particular you know, different ways that they happened, or who designed them, and that kind of stuff. So that'll be coming up as well. So lots more videos to come on the channel, so please, you know, like, subscribe, hit notifications, all that stuff. It really helps. So again, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.